Hello, my friends. Welcome tonight. Thank you for joining me. It's Sunday night, 8 p.m., at least here in the mountains, November 30th, 2025. And I really hope that you had a wonderful Thanksgiving. It was a joy for me. There were some things that were lacking, but altogether, it was a wonderful experience, and I'm grateful for it. I welcome you tonight. I thank you for joining me. Whether you're watching on YouTube or Facebook or somewhere else, I'm glad you're here. Just a couple of things. Let me grab it really quick. I forgot. I forgot to grab it when I started here. Here it is. The Great Rescue of 1856. Brand new book from History of the Saints. It tells the story of the rescue of the Martin and Willie Handcart Company in the winter storms of 1856. That's this story. It's not a lengthy book of history. That's been told enough. This is a book. Whoop! While I drop it, this is a book full of beautiful artwork and stories about individuals involved in the rescue. This would be a great Christmas gift, and it is always a beautiful book to have on the coffee table. So anyway, just letting you know, this is available at historyofthesaints.org. Similarly, this book has been out of print for years, but we finally brought it back by popular demand. It's The Remarkable Journey of the Mormon Battalion. If there's anyone in your family who loves to read Latter-day Saint history, these are two great books, easy to read, quick to read, thorough, and very well done. So again, those are both available for Christmas if you'd like. And again, I was thinking about it earlier today. If you would like to give your sweetheart a gift for Christmas that could last for a lifetime, how about a church history tour? How about a church history tour in 2026? I'm just letting you know, these are some of the tours that History of the Saints will do in 2026. We'll go to San Diego and tour the temple down there and tell the story of the Mormon Battalion and the settlements of the Great Mormon Corridor from here to Los Angeles. We'll tell that story, as well as, like I said, go to the San Diego Temple. We'll also do a trail tour from Chimney Rock back to Salt Lake through Devil's Gate, Martin's Cove, Green River Crossing. That's the second tour. Chimney Rock and the Mormon Trail. And then we'll also do the Cowboy Tour. I don't know about you, but as you can see behind me, I have an affinity. In fact, I've been doing some research on the old cowboy code of the American West. There really was a code of the cowboy, and I'm going to share it with you in an upcoming Fireside. But we're going to do a tour this next summer of 2026. And we'll wind up all the way at Mount Rushmore in the Dakotas, across Wyoming, Cody, Jackson, Yellowstone, and even more will come in that tour. It's called the Great American West and Cowboy Tour. That'll be summer 2026. Imagine getting that as a gift. And we learn all about it. And then two others. There's the Temples and Tabernacles Tour of Utah. We will do Logan. We'll do St. George, Manti, and the Provo City Center Temple, as well as see a number of the historic old tabernacles. We'll do sessions in the temple and tour the tabernacles. And what we're bringing to this is we take care of the whole tour for you. You'll get at least 4 temple sessions, plus all of the history and stories involving those temples. And that brings me to a point which I want to share with you in just a moment. So those are some gifts, a couple of books and some tours in 2026 if you're interested. If you are, go to historyofthesaints.org. If not, just thank you for joining me. And I would be honored if you would drop me a comment and if you would share this fireside with somebody else. It's a fireside. There's no fire. The fire is intended to be the Holy Ghost and to warm someone's soul. I hope that works tonight. So with that, I invite you to have a prayer in your heart as we talk about these things. So let's begin with this. John Alder was born in Switzerland on the 8th of July, 1827. When he came of age, he married Anna Barbara Alder, and they opened a mercantile establishment in their hometown. And evidently, they did quite well. Then about 1856, Latter-day Saint missionaries came into their town. Anna was of a religious nature. She was a studious and noble woman, religiously inclined. She listened to the elders, read their material, especially the Book of Mormon, and came to believe that it was true and wanted to be baptized. However, when she tried to persuade John, well, John was not interested, nor did he want to be, quote, disgraced with Mormonism. Well, that situation went on for more than a year until finally Anna persuaded him to listen just one more time. He agreed if she would finally let Mormonism alone, end of quote. Well, he investigated to find fault. But as you can imagine, instead, John was converted. They were both baptized June 29th, 1857. As soon as their neighbors learned that the two of them had become Latter-day Saints, they boycotted their store, refused to buy their goods, and their house was attacked by a mob and stoned. In consequence, Anna and John quickly sold out and decided to immigrate to America. However, just east of Salt Lake City in their journey, Anna gave birth to a baby girl. The baby did not live, and Anna, as a result, was quite ill. She lingered for 2 years before finally passing away July 26th, 1862. As you can imagine, John took her death very hard, sinking into the depths of despair. Without her faith, optimism, everything seemed dark, end of quote. He became so ill himself that he was delirious for months. His children were taken away from him. His livelihood failed, and he couldn't speak the language. It was a very difficult and dark time for John Alder. Then, quote, one night, after he was able to sit up just a little, he lay there alone, thinking of his devoted wife who had always been full of faith and helped him through many trying scenes of life. He thought of all the dear ones left in Switzerland. He had taken his family from their beautiful home, business, and everything they loved to struggle far out in the wilderness and to die. But she had persuaded him to leave everything for the gospel. He wondered if it were really true. Was it worth it all? He thought of her sufferings, the birth and death of the child, and the greatest of all, her long illness and death. It seemed to him then, in his weakened condition, that he could not carry on and face what was before him alone without her. If only she, the faithful one, had been spared. He wept bitterly in doubt and fear. And then the room seemed to light up, and he saw his beloved wife at the foot of his bed. "John," she said, "do not weep so. Do not doubt. The gospel is true. Yes, it is worth it all. Although it is terrible and dark now, the sun will shine again for you. You will get well and find work you can do. Get a good wife who will help you and mother our children. Don't despair, my dear, and be brave. End of quote. Oh, that's awesome. Well, the sun did shine again for John Alder. By another miracle, which I'll discuss later, John met and married Matilda Schramm. The family grew. John served as a missionary, then a mission leader in Switzerland and Germany. And once back home, John went to work in business and then as a temple worker in Manti and St. George. He passed away July 11th, 1911, at the age of 84. The sun did shine again in those dark times for John, just as it will for you. If you hang on in faith. Don't give up. Never give up. Second story. The title of this story is a quote from the story. Where is your faith?
Grandma Rawson said.
Oh, hang on. I can pick that up later. Where is your faith? There are always difficult times, but again, hang on. It was December 1830 in Fayette, New York, when the Lord gave a revelation to the prophet Joseph Smith that would prove to be the first commandment of this dispensation for the saints to gather. The Almighty called upon all those saints in New York to, quote, assemble together at the Ohio. Doctrine and Covenants 37. Well, there were numerous branches of the church in New York in late 1830, Fayette, Manchester, Colesville, filled with brand new converts to the church. And some of these families had considerable property. Speaking of their property, the Lord said, quote, they that have farms that cannot be sold, let them be left or rented as seemeth them good, end of quote. Doctrine and Covenants 39-37. Just walk away. If you can't sell them or rent them, leave them. And they did. They did. Accordingly, the branches of the church set out in March and April of 1831 to make their way to Kirtland, Ohio. The long and short of the journey was that they met at the Erie Canal at its terminus in Buffalo, New York. There, they were intending to go up the canal to Buffalo and catch a boat going across Lake Erie over to Fairport Harbor. Well, when they arrived in Buffalo Harbor, it was cold and the harbor was blown full of ice. They could not depart. The assembled saints knew also one more thing. They were not among friends, and they strongly encouraged their leader, Mother Lucy Mack Smith, not to sing or to pray, lest she reveal them as Mormons, end of quote. They said to her, now, Mother Smith, if you do sing and have prayers and acknowledge that you are Mormons here in this place, as you have done all along, you will be mobbed before morning, end of quote. Well, you can imagine Lucy's response to that. She said, well, mob it is then, for we shall sing and attend to prayers before sunset, mob or no mob. That's exactly what she did. I can't wait to meet Mother Lucy Mack Smith. She must have been a downright spitfire. No wonder Joseph and Hiram and the rest of them were so good with a mother like that. Well, Lucy managed to contract a boat to take them out of the harbor and across to Fairport. But it was uncertain, of course, when they'd be able to leave because of the ice in the harbor. Nevertheless, the captain wanted to be ready. So the saints loaded everything they had on the boat and waited and waited and waited. Some of the passengers grew restless and wanted to go ashore, but the captain asked that they stay on board as the ice could break up in a minute and they would have to depart. The captain sent one of his men out to measure the depth of the ice. The report came back that the ice was 20 feet deep, according to Mother Smith's account. It might be days, even weeks before the ice would break up. Well, with that news, some were even more determined to leave. One of them was young Orrin Porter Rockwell. He left the boat and went ashore. Just then, Mother Smith perceived a disturbance among her people over here. And she went over to investigate, discovering that there were murmurings, disputations, and doubtings among them, just as among the children of Israel against Moses. Mother Smith went among them and stood up in their midst and rebuked them, saying, "Where is your faith? Where is your confidence in God? Do you know that all things are in his hands? He made all things and still rules over them. How easy a thing it would be with God if every saint here would just lift their desires to him in prayer that the way might be opened before us. How easy it would be for God to cause the ice to break away. And in a moment's time, we could be off on our journey. But how can you expect the Lord to prosper you when you are continually murmuring against him?" End of quote. A few minutes later, she said it again. "Now, brethren and sisters, if you will, all of you, raise your desires to heaven that the ice may give way before us and we be set at liberty to go on our way, as sure as the Lord lives, it shall be done." End of quote. And just at that moment, a noise was heard like bursting thunder, and the captain cried out, "Every man to his post!" And the ice parted, leaving barely a pathway for the boat, so narrow that as they passed through it, the buckets were torn from the water wheel. Lucy later recorded the noise of the ice, the confusion of the spectators, the word of command from the captain, and the hoarse answering of the sailors was truly dreadful. End of quote. That was a scary moment. The saints, Lucy's boat, made it through, and the ice closed again, locking the harbor shut for 3 more weeks. One bystander standing on shore watching the whole thing proclaimed, "The Mormon vessel is sunk." When Mother Smith and the saints arrived across the lake in Ohio, they read saw a newspaper headline proclaiming their own death sinking in the depths of Lake Erie. Well, I don't know, but from my way of reckoning, that very well could have been the very first miracle associated with the gathering of Israel. Today, that gathering continues all around the world in every continent and clime, every kindred, tongue, and people. And miracles do still attend the gathering, individually and as groups. And I know I've seen them. I was a part of the miracles of the gathering and saw many. After all, the gathering of Israel and sealing them up in the temple is the greatest and most important work of our time. Next story. This comes from a friend of mine, and I am privileged that she shared it with me. It's a powerful story. Carolyn was awakened early one July morning. Standing at the foot of her bed was a woman with beautiful, long, dark hair who pleaded with Carolyn to finish her work. What work? Well, Carolyn knew that there were problems on her husband's genealogical lines. The line was broken. Carolyn went to work on it and searched it out and discovered that one of her husband's ancestors, Jemina Angel, the younger sister of Mary Ann Angel Young, the wife of Brigham Young, and Jemina, the older sister of Truman O. Angel, the church architect. Jemina was born October 4th, 1804. On the 21st of March, 1824, Jemina married, now follow this, Valentine Young. And together, Valentine and Jemina had 5 children. In time, the two of them followed the saints and emigrated to Kirtland, Ohio, where in 1837, Valentine was working on the Kirtland Temple and was injured. He later died from those injuries. Jemina subsequently married a man named William Stringham in Nauvoo, but her sister, Mary Ann, had Jemina sealed up to Brigham Young. Jemina then became known as Jemina Angel Young Stringham Young, or Young Young. But later historians, family historians, thought the redundancy was a mistake and they dropped the Young, the first, the second, who cares? But effectively, by doing that, they dropped Jemina's first marriage and her first love and her true love. Well, Valentine was completely left out. They had not been sealed because the ordinances had not yet been revealed and put into practice in Nauvoo yet. He had died in 1837. Well, with the break in the line now discovered, Jemina went to work and permission was granted, and on July 7th, 2014, Valentine and Jemina Young were sealed in the temple. They waited a long time. Now, that's not the end of the story. Knowing that Valentine passed away in Kirtland, Carolyn wanted to find his grave. Where is he? One day, she was on a tour of the Kirtland Temple after we acquired it. She felt impressed to walk over to the west window. As she did, she felt a presence. It was Valentine Young. By the power of the Spirit, the impression was given to Carolyn that Valentine said, "I'm buried right down there." She looked down, and there was the Kirtland Pioneer Cemetery. Once again, after a search, she quickly went out of the temple, and after a search and checking with the sexton, she found no marker, but she did find record that there was a James Young buried in that spot where she'd been pointed to. With further investigation, she realized that James Young was the 6-year-old son of Valentine and Jemina, and he had no wife, as the sexton's record said. Quickly, it was discovered that that was the grave of Valentine and his 6-year-old son, James. Once again, permission was sought and obtained to place a marker on that grave, which has been done, and that grave will be dedicated in October of 2026. After all of these wonderful, miraculous events of our ancestors saying, "Find me, finish my work," Carolyn was serving as a historic sites missionary after all of this in St. George, there in the tabernacle. She was there one evening in the St. George Tabernacle, listening to the lovely music of a concert, when she happened to look up to the second-story northwest window, and she said, quote, "There were 2 images outside the window. The warmest light surrounded them. Together, Valentine on the left and Jemina on the right, still holding hands. His blonde, wavy hair and her rich, dark, long hair, both so happy. As I was weeping for joy with their presence, I looked down for a moment, and when I looked up again, they were gone. The warmest peace filled my soul, and I knew it was a special gift. And then she added, the blinds where they stood were closed. End of quote. It weighs upon my soul as it never has before, my friends, that our kindred dead desire these ordinances. They want to finish gathering to the Savior. And it is so important to them and to the Lord. So much so that the Lord, the Almighty Himself, refers to those like you who seek out their dead and perform those ordinances in the temple. He calls them saviors on Mount Zion. And so you are. Let's take a break. Now, this is with Glenn Rawson Stories. Once again, for Christmas, my friends, I have 2 brand new books coming out. Some of you have been getting emails, at least some think ad nauseum, but we've been giving you all kinds of notification about this brand new book. In preparation for America 250, it's called The God of Our Fathers, Stories from the American Founding. That book will be out very soon. And VIPs will get special discounts. It isn't free to anybody because this isn't the yearly book. The other book that's also out there and brand new is the one you helped me write called Prayer Brings Miracles. Both of them are books of stories. The first, stories from the American founding, individuals, events, times, historical circumstances. The second book is a collection of stories about the power and miracles of prayer. And they're stories that come from people like you. So those 2 books are available at glennrawsonstories.com. If you want them for Christmas, I would be honored. And just one more time, just to mention it, I found out this last week we've got a really good group going to Hawaii in January of 2026. That's a church history tour of Oahu. If you would like to go, there are still a few openings available. Imagine that, giving to your sweetheart as a Christmas gift, a tour of Hawaii in January and February when it's so cold here. Anyway, if you want information on that, if you're interested, go to glennrawsonstories.com. And once again, before I leave this, to all those of you that are VIPs, and I've been trying to reach out to you as much as I can, thank you. Thank you. Your support makes all of this happen, and I am profoundly grateful. As well as to all of you that are free subscribers, that are taking the weekly stories and the video that we're producing for you. All of that is to warm your soul, inspire you with courage and faith, and make your day, your week go a little bit better. All those of you that are VIPs and free subscribers, thank you. Thank you for honoring me. Next story. I promised this one. Matilda Sophia Schramm was born in Germany in 1834, and as a little girl lived very near the Black Forest in Germany. She came from a large family, but as was often the case, child mortality claimed 5 of Matilda's younger brothers and sisters. And then her father passed away at the age of 48. 2 more of Matilda's sisters passed away in the next 3 years. Hence, Matilda was left to help her mother care for the remnant of the family. Well, when Matilda came of age, she moved away to a distant city and opened a ladies' apparel shop. I believe a sister went with her. Matilda was studious, a hard worker, and naturally religious. She loved the Lord and studied His life and His teachings. Then she met Latter-day Saint missionaries who shared the restored gospel of Jesus Christ in the Book of Mormon. She made it a matter of prayer and became convinced that the gospel was true. She was baptized. With the newfound zeal of conversion, Matilda desired to share her faith with her mother. So she did. But to her great astonishment and disappointment, instead of being happy to receive these truths, her mother told her she had been deceived by the Mormons, and her mother tried to get her to give it up. But she said she would never do so. She did, however, Matilda, succeed in getting her brother Carl to accept the gospel and be baptized. In fact, at the age of 22, Carl served as a missionary for 3 years in Germany and in Switzerland. When their mother tried to get him to renounce his church membership and stay with the family, Carl and Matilda decided that's enough. They were going to America and join with the saints gathering in Utah. End of quote. By 1856, Matilda was living in Salt Lake City. John Alder came up to Salt Lake and met her while on a business trip. John was greatly impressed with Matilda, her high ideals, and how much she had sacrificed for the gospel's sake. He could not get her off his mind and finally asked her if she would be his wife. However, and this is my favorite part, Matilda already had 3 other proposals for marriage and couldn't decide which one to accept. She told John she would fast and pray about it. On the 3rd day of her fast, she had a dream in which she saw a man coming up her path holding a little girl by the hand. When John paid her a visit the next day, he brought one of his daughters, a little girl, holding her by the hand. Matilda saw her, and it was the same little girl she had seen in her dream. She told John she would marry him. They were married March 4th, 1865 in Salt Lake City. Matilda returned to Manti with John and lived there for the rest of her life. Do such matters matter to the Lord Almighty? They do. The Lord is involved in our lives individually, collectively, but personally and intimately. He only can see perfectly where the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people for the greatest time will be found. And He so directs us. Trust Him. Trust Him. Okay. Next story. This is a story from history that I don't know if you would say that it's a great faith-promoting, hard, inspired story, but it is something interesting to learn, and it does teach a principle. In 1843, work on the original Nauvoo temple was proceeding, and it rose majestically higher on the bluff over the river. Procuring the means to build the temple or otherwise assisting in the work seems to have been the pressing matter on everyone's mind. The saints built that temple out of extreme sacrifice, their means, their time. They gave their all, just like they had done in Kirtland, to receive those sacred ordinances. Among those saints was Mercy Fielding Thompson. Mercy wrote, "At one time, after seeking diligently to know from the Lord if there was anything I could do for the building up of the kingdom of God, a most pleasant sensation came over me with the following words: try to get the sisters to subscribe 1 cent per week for the purpose of buying nails and glass for the temple." Mercy said, "I went immediately to Brother Joseph and told him what seemed to be the whispering of the spirit of the still small voice to me. Joseph told me to go ahead and the Lord would help me. I then mentioned it to Brother Hiram, who was much pleased and did all in his power to encourage and help by speaking to the sisters in private and in public, promising them that they would receive their blessings in the temple. All who subscribed the 1 cent per week, he said, should have their names recorded in the book of the law of the Lord. I, Mercy said, assisted by my sister, took down and kept a record of all their names. End of quote. That sister was Mary Fielding Smith, Hiram's wife. On Christmas Day, 1843, a letter was sent by the two sisters to all the sisters in England. It read as follows: Dear sisters, this is to inform you that we have here entered into a small weekly subscription for the benefit of the temple funds. 1,000 have already joined it, while many more are expected, by which we trust to help forward the great work very much. The amount is only 1 cent or a halfpenny per week. Your affectionate sisters in Christ, Mary Smith, M.R. Thompson. Hiram Smith followed that with another letter declaring that the penny fund was sanctioned by the First Presidency, and very soon pennies were finding their way across the ocean to Nauvoo. The idea was a success. Mercy wrote, quote, notwithstanding the poverty of the community, we had collected from the sisters by the time the committee was ready for the glass and nails in the treasury, $500, 1 penny at a time, quote, which they gladly received just in time of need, end quote. There's one point in Nauvoo's history when mobs and threatenings and everything else was happening, and they were threatening to massacre the citizens of Nauvoo, that Mercy and Mary Fielding Smith took the penny box and hid it in a pile of bricks, which Hiram intended for building, and which he would have done had his life been spared, end of quote. Now, brothers and sisters, this is the sacrifice that the early saints were willing to make to have a house of the Lord in their midst. Right out that window, right here in front of me, just across the valley, is the Draper Temple. I wake up to it every morning and rejoice in seeing it. What sacrifices am I willing to make in and for the house of the Lord and my kindred dead? Lord, help me. I didn't intend it this way, but there is a common theme to this fireside, that out of adversity, great things happen, like this story. Missionary work in the Hawaiian Islands, and by the way, I am going to Hawaii, as I mentioned, in January, and you're invited to come. Missionary work in the Hawaiian Islands started on Oahu in December 1850 with Elder George Q. Cannon and companions. Then, February 17th, 1853, Elder Thomas Karren, who had marched with the Mormon Battalion in 1846 and 47, he arrived on Oahu to serve. After arriving, he felt strongly impressed that he should leave Oahu and go to the Big Island, Hawaii. Accordingly, on June 1st, 1853, Elder Karren and Elder Nathan Tanner, a recent convert named John W. Kahumoku, left Oahu in a small boat bound for Hawaii. The voyage was routine until the middle of the second day, and they ran headlong into a heavy gale. The seas became very rough, and the small boat was tossed violently. The storm continued for 2 days, and during that time they made only 20 miles and the men were seasick to the extreme. On the morning of the third day, and the storm still raged, the decision was made to seek a sheltered cove and wait out the storm. They were able to make it to and anchor in a cove on the far northern tip of the island of Hawaii in the Kahala region. They then came to shore. Thomas Karren said, "When I landed, I could barely walk up the beach. My limbs fairly trembled with weakness, having not eaten anything since Monday night, and now it is Thursday. Soon," he said, "we were surrounded by a lot of natives, poor and miserable to all appearance. We felt that nature was almost exhausted." End of quote. I think the meaning of that last phrase is, we gave up to die. Well, the missionaries learned that there was there a man who was a member of the church, and the man invited them to come and stay. That first evening on their desperate anchorage in Hawaii, a great number of natives sought them out and asked to hear their message. And they fired off all kinds of questions. Now, Elder Kahamoku was converted, a member of the church, and spoke the language. So he taught and interpreted masterfully. Well, the missionaries were invited to come, the natives were invited to come back the following morning. And they did. And they heard the preaching again. At the close of that second meeting, 25 natives came forth requesting baptism. The next day, they held another meeting, and 2 more locals requested baptism. The saying went up among the locals, the native Hawaiians, that it was God that had brought the storm in order to, quote, blow the missionaries into this place that was otherwise inaccessible, in order that the gospel might be preached to them. When the captain of the schooner heard of the missionary's success, he said that that must have been the reason why he had to put into that cove, because he had 3 Jonahs on board, and they had to be landed there. End of quote. Elder Karren agreed. He wrote, "Indeed, I believe the Lord is in it, causing us to have been driven to this place. This is the extreme north point of the island of Hawaii, the district of Kahala. While traveling this morning through the settlements and neighborhood of this place along the seacoast, I was reminded of the sayings of the prophets, when God would send out fishers and then hunters to hunt out Israel out of the dens and caves of the earth and holes of the rock. Indeed, the sons of Jacob are to be found here, in the holes of the rocks, and the Spirit of God is at work with them." End of quote. The work continued, and more people accepted baptism. Even the village chief was taught, baptized, and then ordained to leadership among them. A more attentive and sincere people the missionaries had never seen. The schooner finally sailed out of the cove, and when it did, the missionaries were not on board. Thomas Karren said, "The whisperings of the Spirit to us was to tarry here for a while. How long I do not know, but I pray to my Father which is in heaven always, that I may know the voice of His good Spirit and walk according to its dictates. I do feel to praise my God for every manifestation of His providence to me." End of quote. End of quote. The boat sailed away, and the missionaries continued to teach and to baptize. On June 15th, 1853, Elders Karren and Tanner organized 2 branches of the church and ordained leadership to preside and teach. Thomas wrote, I never saw a people feel better in my life. They manifested much of the Spirit of God. We all felt well." End quote. It was later learned by the missionaries that at the time that they were blown ashore by that storm, that the natives had become dissatisfied with the religion among them and were praying earnestly to know the truth. Thomas Karren served among the people of Hawaii for years to come, as did others who would follow. And thus the work of the Lord was established on Hawaii. My dear brothers and sisters, how many times out of the storms of adversity, opposition, and difficulty, literally and figuratively, have the great blessings of salvation been made manifest? I am a witness. It is true. I hope that you have a wonderful week going forward.